exciting times.
I don't think I could have done what I'm doing now had it not been the kind of school that it was, had it not taught me discipline. And I had no idea what I was getting into. So I come to USC, of all places, and I was thrown in with people who, in my opinion, had started making films when they were in the womb, and I'd never taken a picture. The process of making your final film was up to your peers in the old building in the center there. It was like a big auction. You take your script out there, and if you could convince 4 other people to spend 1 year of their lives and all that money to be your production manager and your sound manager, then you got to make your film.
I don't know if I can take another summer of pink and blue.
Pink and blue. They would not put us in the same cabin.
But I want to know who they're going to put us with.
Yeah.
Who are these new girls anyway? All right, you 3. I don't know who's going to be lucky enough to get you this year, but I'm sure glad it's not me.
The 480 experience was marvelous because it wasn't just making movies, but it was learning to deal with all these personalities. Everyone, when I was going through, felt that they were a director, and the egos were large, and trying to come to terms with that was a lot. You spent a lot of your time doing that.
If we could have gotten the stage, we could have done it on the stage, the office thing, but we still would have had to go into INA. To get the outside. Exterior office, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, this is probably going to get me into a lot of shit with the rest of the people on the crew, but what really is the situation as far as I'm concerned was that this was planned for in the script. It wasn't changed. If it was changed, it was changed on the set.
There would be major arguments among the participants, and people's emotions, attentions were just, raw and right there, and everyone was just, emotions were on your sleeve. You were just so anxious all the time.
Argument where it's so obvious.
Trying to deal with the other people, learning how to work together. I think it's a big part of the experience, and it's invaluable because that's what you continue to do on the outside, where the egos just get bigger and bigger. At the time, you thought you were, living through hell. You were crazed. You went, 16 hours, 18 hours a day and just flying on adrenaline and trying to meet deadlines and trying to find, in our cases, in both of these documentaries, we were sort of searching for the story as we were going. And I think people all around us were sort of shaking their heads and thinking, oh, my God, they don't get it. They're never going to get it. But, we didn't quit. We found it.
I discovered, first to my horror and then amusement, that the notebooks weren't filling up. It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't Johns Hopkins, and it wasn't Romance Languages. It was Gene Peterson sitting on the edge of his desk with his shirt open, with his cigarette dangling, saying, what are you doing here anyway? What do you think you're doing?
Well, I think we were in the unique position of breaking new territory. This wasn't a curriculum that had existed before. We were starting from scratch. And we undoubtedly made lots of mistakes, but we also, I think, had some fairly good hunches and some successes on things.
The idea that we didn't all agree with each other was a big help.
Right.
Come on, let's go, March.
Hey, Dave, take it easy. The least we can do is offer the students our time.
Time is money.
Money is film.
Vorkpich said film is time.
What time is it anyway?
Look, if a former student comes to us for advice, to screen something for our feedback, we offer some personal treatment. That's the least we can do in our profession.
Profession? Jeez, I work at home. I come here to screw around.
A whole lot easier to screw around here if we had some decent equipment.
Well, it's not always the equipment, but pilot error.
Look, I can only urge all of us to offer some valid criticism and guidance.
Can we run the thing faster than 25 frames a second?
24.
25. I do budget.
What a slitter on the projector.
Make Super 8 facer out of it, right?
It was us and them. Although, I'd say we loved the faculty. Actually, we got along very well with the faculty there. But, they had rules. And there is always going to be where you're a student in an institution, where there are the rules and and the people that have to sort of carry out those rules, and the students that are naturally against all rules. want to do whatever they want to do.
I worked with just about everybody, really. Doug Cox was in charge of the directing program. Erwin Blacker, one of my favorites, was in charge of the writing program. That's the very first contact I had with screenwriting, which is how I eventually started my filmmaking career through screenwriting.
You gotta know how to treat the bitches, otherwise you're just gonna get crapped on. You're just gonna get crapped on. First thing, don't talk much. Don't shoot your mouth off. Don't say a lot. It's the silence that drives them nutty. Makes them want it that much more. Makes them crave it like a junkie craving horse. Look, you treat them nice and it's kiss off, pal. Forget it. You know what I mean. I mean like the ticket reads altogether different. You gotta plan it just right. You gotta make them beg for it, push them around, beat them, club them, stomp them. When they're begging and pleading and retching and squealing and squawking good and loud, then and only then, that's when you give it to them. They'll be back. They'll always be back for more.
When I was here, there was a class taught by Les Novros, which was a very interesting look at film, a very different look than what we were talking about in most of our other classes. He made you see contrast. He made you see contrast in size and color and form. It was fascinating kind of stuff that you could sort of not only absorb in his class, but use in all of the other classes and all of filmmaking. There was some attention focused on women's issues, even though there weren't many women in the school at the time. But I think the women that were here were very involved and were trying to make statements about that.
Hey, how do you like my gown? Oh, Christ. Janie. Come on, Liz, we're going.
You have no right. You're married.
Come on. Guy?
It was always a scramble to get equipment, not just my crew, but all of the crews. You kind of wanted to get there as early as you could on Friday to kind of get the good stuff, because you knew that some of the equipment wasn't as good as some of the other equipment. You were always trying to build a relationship with whoever was running the stockroom, so that you would kind of get the good stuff, ahead of the other guys and make special arrangements.
It was tough to make a 480 back then, because we had to share equipment, and I remember if I was shooting in Calabasas, I would make a deal with another crew. I would meet them on the freeway at midnight, and they would give me their Niagara, because we were sharing it. They would have it from 9 till midnight. I would have it from midnight till dawn. In fact, on my soundtrack, there's a rooster crowing. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be 6 o'clock at night, and there's a rooster because it's dawn. So we met on the freeway and changed Niagaras because there wasn't a lot of equipment. We did whatever we could.
Equipment is a big deceiver, and I know students are always interested in trying to get their hands on very sophisticated equipment, whether or not it's appropriate to what they want to do. Ultimately, when you don't have the equipment as the distraction, I think it's easier to focus in on the idea.
If you have talent, it will show through. If you don't have talent, no matter how much money you've got, it's not going to make any difference. You can have a slicker, fancier-looking movie, but it won't be any good.
The idea of becoming a professional Hollywood director, screenwriter, cameraman, any of that really was not around. It hadn't been done, at least not very much. And I don't think any of us ever imagined that we would wind up doing it. Just the idea of getting a job editing an educational film or an industrial film or being the assistant editor on something like that was considered professional work of the highest order.
When I was in film school, I really wanted to be I guess the only way to describe it is an underground filmmaker. And I had a lot of friends up here in San Francisco, Scott Bartlett, and a bunch of people who had been making sort of artistic movies that didn't really go anywhere. And that's where I figured I would end up.
I had to reevaluate where I was going and realized that I was interested in narrative filmmaking, and I had to learn, so I started script supervising.
I went out and worked on low-budget, awful, horrible films that taught me about filmmaking as a makeup artist. So that was an invaluable experience, and my advice would be, unless you're going to be one of those charm people who can walk out the door and direct, Learn something else that'll get you onto a set and onto a stage and into the thing.
I didn't really even know what a script supervisor did, but my work at USC on those documentaries as an editor and as a camera person, as a director, let me know what I needed. What, if I had been directing those films, what I would need from a script supervisor. So I was able to step in and kind of do this job very well because of my training here.
I think they have a pretty good background of the overall process of making films. They can make their work fit in with somebody who's working in another discipline that has to go together with making films.
But the important thing is they understand the needs and they work together with it.
I think the other aspect is that they really have had the experience of doing it. Here they do it. When they get through, they have done it and they know what you can do and what you can't do.
We drive them, we push them, they survive and come back for more.
When I was a student, and I thought I knew it all, so I was, I didn't have any problems because I knew everything there was to know about everything. It wasn't until later that I discovered I didn't know anything.
I have to explain to you right now that when I won the Paul Muni Award for the oval portrait, I suddenly thought I was going to go right into some studio, at least in charge of all the other directors, if nothing else. And that didn't occur.
So we had a great spirit of building, and the students had this spirit, and the faculty had this spirit. It was a time of challenge.
For me, it was unique because it was a chance for me to, I felt, a stepping stone to learn the industry and perfect my craft and get into the industry, because that was what my goal was.
You're here for a little while, and you suddenly realize what making movies could be all about, and that you're in a professional school, and you're being trained, and you're learning things that you can apply in a real world that exists beyond the wall.
You've got to believe in the project that you're involved with. You've got to be passionate about it. I think that the faculty was very passionate and very caring, and it's one of the things that they talked about and instilled. And it's absolutely the bottom line. I mean, it's where you have to begin.
So it's not the discipline of you have 1 week to finish your cut. It's the discipline of telling a story. I was telling a story. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. Period. You can't get around that here, and that is great.
The chance to fall on your face, to make mistakes, and to go on, to learn that it's okay. You can explore this and explore that. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it's still very valuable. That's what was so wonderful about the school.
I've always felt the school needed to be a little bit more competitive. I mean, there's a whole theory that it should be a safe haven and you should be allowed to do whatever you want to do, and you should not have the pressure of worrying about your mistakes and that sort of thing. And I agree with that, but I do think there should be a challenge.
I even have some reviews from that era that accuse us all of going Hollywood. Boy, were they right.
We figured that they're out there making movies all the time. Someone has to do it. It might as well be us.
Sound ready, roll sound, rolling, market, action. Okay, that's standard. We can. Okay.
Can we hear that one more time again? Let's go through your pages here.
For sound.
What? Let's go through it.
He's going to tell you to roll sound. You just roll sound. Yeah. And then when you say speed, he'll say market.
Who's going to say slated?
He will.
I'll say slated, and then I'll say market. Great.
And
Market with either way. Who's going to slate it? You are. I am? Apparently. All right.
But not on your finger.
my mind's eye, it's still there. And I could see the patio where we would talk for hours on end and lean against the chain, and inevitably the chain would break and someone would roll backwards into the grass.
We were a much smaller school, so that it was possible to know everybody. You knew all the students, you knew what was going on. We were here 40, 50 hours a week, working with the students on very close one-on-one, one-on-two or three or four situations. Well, it's a hell of an education that you get that way.
It was very, very emotional to see that place come down, because we'd all given a lot to it. There was an awful lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it.
It's a nice green area now, and I think it's a pleasant resting place for the memories that were over there.